Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday Night Breakdown, Monday edition. Daniel Ratledge and Dave Forrester with you to go through all of the action. 4 games, Dave. We can take our time.
Yeah, well, I think we generally do, don't we? I don't think this stuff is known for its brevity. Yeah, so yes, let's have a meander through them, shall we? As
Well,
opposed
let's start north of the border.
to
As Ania said to me yesterday, I think it was Mark had said to her uh, that Newcastle had 4 games in 8 days in 3 countries.
yeah, Glasgow, Scotland,
Scotland.
Scotland, Cheshire. Well, I suppose Cheshire's a country of its own, isn't it? Down there,
Yeah,
Merseyside.
yeah.
Then Slovakia, then Newcastle. So 3.5, yeah.
So let's start with the first of those in Scotland. Caledonia Gladiators 66, Newcastle Eagles 71. No Whelan, no Jimenez for Caledonia. Long was in for his Newcastle debut. Dave, what happened to all the offense? Last week we were talking about the up and down, you score, we score. Where did that all go?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Caledonia were coming back from Ludwigsburg on Tuesday night,
Mm,
and they're in the midst of an absolutely brutal
mm,
schedule. Absolutely brutal. Because I think they played Friday, Sunday, or they played Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, and then the teams that they've got in FIBA Euro Cup, which is basically once a week for the next few weeks,
mm.
are really no mugs.
No.
Um, and that starts with Ludwigsburg, who forced them into 28 turnovers on Tuesday night, as
Mm,
well as limiting Patrick Whelan to 6 minutes with an injury. And then Kyle Jimenez got an injury in the third quarter. So, there's quite a lot of mitigation for
yeah,
Caledonia
yeah,
in relation to that. Um, Newcastle, Newcastle, I'm not sure that their team is going to be built to score 90 a game.
no.
At this point, as it is at the moment, because they're still playing with some gaps, quite clearly. But it was a weird game because it was a game whereby the swings in relation to the domination of each team,
Mm.
it were quite noticeable, and neither team could break the momentum of the other once they went on a run.
Well, let's
So the
talk
run,
about those
yeah.
first couple of swings because it was 13-7 after 7.5 minutes. And then Eagles went on a 25-2 run to the midpoint of the second quarter to go 17. That must be four, mustn't it? 22 to 4, 25-4. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've not done the maths on that. Whatever it is, it was 17-31 ahead at the end. Fagbending was in foul trouble as well for
Well,
Caledonia.
it sounds kind of strange, but the reality is that Newcastle's second unit has been a heck of a lot better than the first unit
Mm,
in every game this season. Partly because of the difficulties they're having with Llewellyn in relation to him not being able to get the ball where it needs to get to or to score the ball. And partly because Okoro's been coming off the bench and Okoro's been there, you saw him yesterday,
yeah, yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, he is pretty good.
Okoro, and I add in Spencer to that, and Spencer's been
Yeah.
better than Llewellyn. And when you add in the fact that then you get Defoe's experience coming off the bench as well, and those teams that those units are playing against the opposition's second unit, and in relation to Caledonia, it's a mixed up second unit
Yeah.
because obviously they don't have Whelan or Jimenez, and DeBose isn't healthy. I can't believe DeBose is healthy. His game has or his production has dropped off to the point whereby that must be a health thing. So that means that Caledonia have kind of some mismatched um, units out there, whereas Newcastle's second unit, with particularly with Spencer and Okoro, has really impacted games positively, basically every game this season.
Mm, mm. Threes from Hill and Onwas in the third quarter. An 8-0 run got Caledonia back into it. And it was 47-47 with less than a minute to go in the third. Then another big run by the Eagles,
And
19-2 this time.
yeah, it was rinse and repeat because again, the Eagles starting five, the starting group really couldn't change it a little bit, but really couldn't score the ball very well, which gave Caledonia the chance to come back into a run. And then the bench group with the defense that they were playing, and also, in reality, Caledonia had some open looks, but they weren't knocking them down. They were playing a little bit dispirited, I thought.
Mm.
They didn't look overly.
No,
Um,
I picked up on that as well.
I think there was maybe a play in the first minute where, second minute where Barnes was arguing with the ref and Faro threw him the ball and off a defensive rebound and it went out of bounds
Yeah.
and there's kind of double teapots all around in relation to whatever. They just didn't get a particularly happy vibe. And on top of that, obviously, so the guy they've got that has to make all the decisions and all the plays is the rookie point guard,
Mm.
who was 0 of 8 in the first half, and I think had 18 points in the second half.
Yeah, he did.
But became a kind of a shooter. Basically, became he said stuff this. I'm going to try and score, and that kind of helps, and it also hinders. So Newcastle's defense has been pretty solid. I mean, their rebounding's been very good, and they rebounded the ball a lot better than they did in the first game against Caledonia. Lord Hibbert again, it's really probably been the compared to the one I saw last year, the difference in his game is in his confidence and his just his demeanor and everything about him is massively different, and it's made a big impact on that team. And he kind of led them when they needed scoring, and the others just kind of just do what they do. Okoro gets to the rim, Knight scores 16 without you noticing, and then they played just about enough defense to survive.
Well, it looked like it was over at 49-66, to be honest with you, and then somehow Caledonia got themselves in it in the last minute. Malcolm corner three got it down to 5. Alan Ikens goes 1 for 2 at the other end. Hill with a fade away, and suddenly it's a 4-point game, and they almost turned it over. Newcastle, Defoe had his pass deflected, and then Gladiators opting not to foul. Newcastle run the ball down. We've got to get to the play at the end, Dave. We've not spoken about this. I can imagine that what your thought would be, but let me explain what happened. There's a shot with about a second or more left on the shot clock, hits the side of the board. I paused it at that point, and you can see on the clock 17.5 on the game clock, 1.3 on the shot clock.
Yeah.
Somebody on the table has erroneously reset the shot clock. Alan
They didn't
Ikens
actually reset it, they just blanked it.
well, that's the
Didn't
point
go
of
to
the reset.
14.
Yeah.
Didn't,
Well, you press the button and then I think you switch left or right or something like that. I
right,
can't
okay,
remember.
well, they didn't either.
But Alan Ikens catches it, throws it back up off the bottom of the rim. Roughly, it's hard to pause that quick, but roughly it's about 16.5 on the clock. So that is before the shot clock would have expired because it was 1.3 at 17.5. The ref stopped the game, talked about it, and called a shot clock violation.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a number of things I could say. One, I don't want to, go back into my paranoia about Scottish table of it. That would be quite wrong. It goes back 19 years to a game at Braehead.
Yeah.
When TJ Walker stole the ball off Jerry Williams at the buzzer, made the layup to win the game. Actually, no, the Eagles were down by 2 with 5 seconds to go. TJ made a shot, stole the inbounds pass, made a layup, actually won the game. And Chris Dodds and Rob Hickman had no clue, and waved it off. It was just
Rob Hickman was all the way up in Braehead.
Rob Hickman was in Braehead, and if I'm wrong about that and my memory's playing tricks, I'll be told otherwise. But anyway, so ever since then, and on top of that, you always have this thing in Glasgow because the clock is different. It always runs a bit after. It always runs a bit after the clock. It always
You
used to
talked
run a
about
little
that
bit,
before.
which meant it didn't start straight away as well.
Yeah.
And it was put back on. So so the paranoia about the job that's probably that's gone now though, because I don't know anybody anymore. So I'll leave that. The number of points about it. One hell of a play by Alan Ikens. A number that was a winning play because that play actually won the game or should have won the game. That's they've got the ball back. That's a foul. That's 4 points. It's game over, and kind of indicative of his ability to kind of make heady kind of plays and just be where the ball is. Secondly, absolute indictment in relation to the fact that we don't have replays. I can rewind it straight away and see. And the refs, to be frank, it's a tough call because if you're the ref, you're looking at what's going on underneath.
Yeah.
You're looking at
Logic would say he's at the side of the board. It's going to be a shot clock violation.
Well, you've got to know how long's on the clock.
Yeah.
But when the shot goes up there, and that's not an easy thing to do when you're looking at all the other stuff, and you've really got to go with the tail officials, but with 1.1 seconds, with 15 seconds to go in the game, you cannot have an erroneous reset like that.
Yeah, yeah,
It wasn't close. It wasn't close to hitting the rim.
yeah.
There's no, other than an itchy finger. That's a substantial error,
Mm.
which can and should be rectified by way of the ref being able to go and look at look at the
Look at the
clock.
clock. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's just nonsense that can't happen. We've got in EMBL that will be challengeable, and you'll be able to go and they'll be able to go and do that.
Mm.
We've got the technology to allow us to do that.
And
So
that's actually a pretty easy one
of course it is.
because
Yeah,
you only need camera one to see it, really.
exactly. Yeah, and if, at the end of the day, if you can't resolve it by that, you stick with what the ref made. The decision the ref made, and everybody said, "Well, we did our best." So I'm fine with that. But overall, again, it didn't impact. Ultimately, it wasn't a 1 point game; it was a 4 point game at
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it wasn't as critical as it could have been, but we can't be having that as not being correctable. I get people make mistakes, but it cannot be a situation where and when the clock restarted, was it on the exact 24 second?
No, that was my
That
next
was
point. It's
yeah.
16.4 seconds the clock was reset to, which if you were paying attention earlier when I said 39.9, is 23 and a half seconds later. So,
Well, then and there you go. I mean, so again, something which is easily correctable by way of just a simple assessment of what's going on by probably 30 seconds to a minute, which no one would begrudge at that point.
mm,
Um, so yeah, not great.
no. So then Stuckman misses the three. There's a bit of a scramble for the loose ball. It comes out to Malcolm, picks it up, fires up a three. Knight challenging the shot. It's not the best angle to tell, but I didn't think it looked like much foul. I wasn't even sure it was a three, if I'm honest with you. I wasn't sure he got his feet behind the line of
Yeah,
line.
well, I couldn't really see from the angle. I mean, I'm not sure you should be challenging it to that degree, but if
Mm,
it was a good defensive play or a foul, I wouldn't know because I couldn't see.
yeah,
Yeah, we've had the 3 point shot foul across the league is being relatively irregularly administered, I would say.
mm,
Referee. I mean, there was one in the Sheffield game with Stuckman near the end, which we'll talk about later.
yeah, yeah,
And there was another one actually in actually this game where on what actually changed the course of the game in the third quarter, where Okoro was called for an undercutting foul on Onwas for a 3 point shot, and Onwas then went on to miss all three foul shots.
mm,
And it wasn't close to undercutting. He was, it almost went up and landed, and the car was kind of next to him. He's in a space that almost could have moved to the side to get to. But for me, that is going to be a foul, and we may as well just stop playing defense and just let guys just shoot. And so I see, yeah, so that's a difficult one. They're difficult calls for the refs because they've got to have it. Sometimes you've got different angles side on as to
yeah,
where the
yeah,
player is landing. You're not necessarily seeing what we're seeing on the video. And the landing space, if you're looking at it side on, that can foreshorten the distance. So if
yeah, yeah,
players are defending it from the side and kind of going to the side and then almost running past the shooter, as
yeah,
opposed to standing in front of them, it can look like that. And on top of that, you've also got the shooters who are going to be sticking their legs out as well.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
As I say,
not
it
any,
was
they're not easy calls.
no,
I've always, I mean, I do think that and it's always been kind of a long lasting suspicion of mine is that that defensive players get stitched a little bit on
yeah.
calls for the
It's been a
shot.
point of emphasis in EuroLeague, Eurocup last couple of
It
years.
has done, but what that results in is a clever offensive players trying to find a way to impress upon the referee they're being fouled, and
Yeah,
the skill therefore is for the ref to know, I'm not giving you that one,
yeah.
you know,
Well,
or
they've actually gone to extra punishment for the offensive players in EuroLeague, Eurocup now for that
to
sort of
eliminate
technicality.
it, as ever, will be a year or two behind that.
Yeah, yeah.
And the argument is, they can't. Well, how many times have you seen? We haven't had many flop warnings for 3 point shooters this year. I haven't seen,
No, I don't think I've seen any. Yeah.
and that the law of averages, law of numbers. that ain't right. So, Knight might have fouled him. I don't
Yeah, he
know.
might.
I mean, but the ball probably didn't think he was fouled because
Well,
Malcolm
the
first
ball had
two.
its own mind, and he missed the first two free throws, Malcolm. So it was only a 3-point game with 8 seconds to go. Ward Hibbert made some free throws, and that was basically the game.
Yeah.
Hill 18 points, as you said, all of those in the second half. Barnes 11, Stuckman 10. They were 7 of 24 from three. They were 34% from the floor. Caledonia. Knight 7 of 11, 16 points. Alan Ikens 13.7 rebounds. Okoro and Josh Ward Hibbert both had 12.
Yeah, Caledonia's kind of roster construction is really interesting because, they're having to be almost schizophrenic in the way that they've got these two competitions, and they don't want to be embarrassed in Europe, so they don't want to kind of just be BBL size, so they've gone bigger. They're only using 5 of their import spots, so there's an extra import spot they're not using. But they've got 6 Brits. They've basically tried Mark Bentley as a wing, and unfortunately, he's become a bit of a turnover machine. He's struggling to make good decisions. When he makes plays, he's fine. When he plays without thinking, he's fine. But when he's struggling to make decisions from the wing, Dubose is one of those import spots, and he's a shadow of what he was. And hopefully for him, he'll get back. Onwas and Barnes is the other guy, because Barnes is probably in BBL terms, he's probably a 5, probably a centre. He's
Yeah.
a solid 6'9". He's not a knockdown shooter in really. He can shoot the 3, but he's not a knockdown guy in relation to shooting it. He's a little bit bigger than that, so he's probably a 5. But then you've got Hughes and Ali Hodge. So, any minutes Barnes is going to get at the 5 are basically going to be when neither of those guys is on the court.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be
Very
many minutes
many.
in the
Not
game,
very many.
which means he's having to kind of play the 4, which makes him look a little bit unwieldy because obviously Stuckman's a proper 4. Yeah, that's his position. But so Barnes is a bit of a tweener, and he helps them probably in Europe when they're rebounding, and he's got that athleticism and block shots. But in our league, it's difficult because he's not really a playmaker. And as I say, he's probably more of a 5, and he's been kind of pushed into playing the 4. And on top of that, for Hughes, it's a hell of a start because as well as I do, the history of British 7-footers in our league is basically fine. Remember one,
Yeah,
you
I'm
know I
trying to
mean
think of what dominant one, 7 foot.
well, Zach Wells played for a few years, but you wouldn't describe Zach Wells as dominant.
You know,
uh,
one at Leicester 2 years ago, was it? The kid from Manchester. I can't remember his name now.
yeah, there you go. That kind of says it all. I mean, legend Robertin, but again,
Yeah.
not that these guys are probably more experienced guys than Theo Hughes, and they've all struggled to have an impact. And the reason for that isn't because they can't play, because Theo Hughes played against Ludwigsburg, BBL team on Tuesday night. He had 9 points and 9 rebounds,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? And BBL being German Bundesliga team, higher level than our league. Yeah, comes back to this country and he's playing a different game, and it's hard.
Yeah, it is.
And it's hard because it's a game that is not suited to somebody his size, with the guys he's having to guard. So I don't know. With Whelan being out, and Whelan covers a multitude of ills, covers them up because he's so good. Because you can play the point, you can play the 1, you can play the 2, you can shoot the ball, you can score in bunches, all that stuff. He makes the right play. But with him being out, and him as to a lesser degree, it's kind of really shone a light on everything else with them. And I don't know if they're going to, if it's almost, they're right in the middle of Europe now. So it's almost like, they're kind of stuck with what they've got. I wouldn't be surprised if they, if they had an extra import though. They've got the ability to do that. If I was them, I'd be looking for a kind of a guy who can play off the dribble from the 3 spot. Because Fraser Markham's really struggling because they're not generating good shots. So he's, I think, by Friday night when I checked, he was 2 of 18 for the season from the 3-point line, and his career 36-37%.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's something not quite right there on offensively. Defensively, they're competitive, undoubtedly, and they challenge shots and they do the right things. But offensively, they're not having fun. Newcastle, talk about them a little bit more after the Cheshire game, I think.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to Saturday. Surrey 89 is 69. They're just keeping it, wasn't it 79 last week, and it's 69 this week, and there we go. It'll be 99 next week. Bristol Flyers 92. No Leslie Smith, no Lawrence. Jalen Ray was in though for Surrey. Um, Before we go with this, I let it slide last week. I'm going to have my rant. We can't be having red versus green. We
No,
can't. I know there's kit issues and blah blah blah, but we can't be having red versus green. It's just like for me, for those who don't know, I'm colorblind, by the way. I have a
mm,
red green color deficiency. It wasn't too bad at Bristol last week. I think it's to do with the lighting, but in this game,
it was awful. Yeah,
it was not quite unwatchable. I struggled more actually when they played Buchan away and the red versus black. Again, something to do with the lighting and the shade of red.
mm.
Um, uh, but there will be people with a slightly different variation of the red green colorblind who just wouldn't be able to tell the difference between those two kits at all. And it's
Yeah,
just
I mean, in the past, there was always one light kit, one dark kit.
well,
Yeah,
you see, in the
70.
when I started out on TV, all the TV games had to be light versus dark because the viewfinders were in black and white on the cameras.
Yeah,
So I mean, obviously the cameras were color. I'm not that old, but the viewfinders were in black and white. So the cameramen needed light and dark to be able to tell the difference. But now the cameras all have color viewfinders. It's less of a problem. But the reality is there's 20, 25, 30 people involved in the game, referees, coaches, there's bound to be somebody who's colorblind. Just
yeah,
statistically speaking, there's probably two people who are colorblind. And there was one pass, I can forget who made it, but somebody threw a pass directly to the opposing team.
right.
And I instantly went, I wonder if he's
He's the
colorblind
one.
and
He
he's
got it
just
out with
thrown
him.
it to the wrong team because, and to be fair, last week when it happened, colorblind.org, which is a campaigning colorblind thing I follow on Twitter, called it out on I don't know how they came across it, but they
Yeah.
went,
Well,
"What fresh
maybe they
hell
follow
is
you back.
this?"
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And Vaughan Millett actually responded and said, "We've got kid issues. We will be better." Blah blah blah. So fair enough that he acknowledged it and said something about it, but it's not. We can't. Red versus green is just not.
No, it's not. It
We
doesn't. It can't
can't
work.
do
I
it.
mean, stop, go, whatever.
Anyway, rant over.
Sorry.
Robinson scoring well inside, but this one was a bit more score for score in the first quarter than the last game.
Yeah. Firstly, I got the opportunity to see these teams play against each other pre-season in Newcastle. Um, Bristol were playing the first game, Surrey were playing the second game. So Bristol actually were quite effective against Surrey. Um, Jalen Ray played. Jalen Ray is probably the purest scorer in the league. I would say I haven't seen quite enough of a scorer yet to know whether he's got the consistency on his jump shot. There's a difference between a scorer and a shooter. You know, a shooter is a guy who just comes around schemes, kind of your Ethan Wright guy at Leicester, someone like that. He's just Quinn Snyder, Quinn Cooper last year,
Cooper, yeah.
that type of thing. They are shooters. They're not what you describe as scorers. Um, Ray can score in every which way, and he can get his own shot. He can do he can get to the rim. He is just an absolute. He's a bucket, to use a phrase. Um, what it does give them is two little guards,
Mm,
and without Lawrence as the third guard, and that's that meant that the third guard in this game had to be Parkinson, who's a bit young, and then Cholovinskis also, who are young. They're putting a lot of pressure on those young guys to play the third guard spot, and they don't have much size at the guard spot. Bristol looked like they figured a heck of a lot out in this game. Now I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
sure if it's because of the way Surrey utterly failed to deal with their screen and roll at any point,
mm,
because I'm afraid the first action on the screen and roll was absolutely it was a lot of it was pick and pops.
mm,
But the first action was devastating for them. They just couldn't kind of figure it out. There was a time where they're throwing the ball to McCormack on the kind of the Skylar right pick and pop, and he's able to take a dribble and he's in the paint, and just whether they're the Garden Key, how the Garden Key Johnson, I couldn't figure out. There was a little bit of time where they kind of doubled a little bit and really hard hedged and took Bristol out of it a little bit. But apart from that, I thought they just got filleted. And part of that is that your defenders are small, so you can be, your two guards can be you can be seen over them. You can throw it over them. And Bristol are long and athletic. Um, Part of it is just continuity in relation to um, who's been playing, and Ray comes in. Ray plays lots of minutes. But in the second, the difference in this game was the team's benches. Basically, the Bristol benches just absolutely eviscerated the Surrey bench.
Well, Thomas Edwards helped them to a 10-0 run in the second quarter. Lewis pushed it to double figures before halftime, and then, to be honest with you, there was 6-0 run early in the third quarter. It was 15, and that was pretty much that.
Yeah, well, Thomas Edwards outscored the entire Surrey bench. I think Thomas Edwards had 13 points in 15 minutes, and the Surrey bench had 11 points in 66 minutes. You know, you ain't going to be close in a situation like that. And I mean, Kendall Lewis, he got up for a putback, mind.
Yeah.
Well, got the eyes out, you could see he's bouncy with kind of long arms, and he showed it in that. You just kind of got the impression that Surrey are a little bit, when dealing with the level of athleticism that Bristol had, Surrey were a little bit short, certainly at the wing spot. They basically got Josh Steele playing the wing spot and not much else. Raekwon Brown, the American guy, and he's a bit skinny to play the three, but he is playing the three. He's probably 6'3", probably a shooter, as opposed to someone who can compete with the Bristol guys. And at the point of attack, Keady Johnson, and they shouldn't be being surprised by Keady Johnson because it's the third time they played him already in four. And that's kind of the most concerning thing for me about Surrey and that kind of the roster construction isn't what happened to them. It's that's the third time they played that team in 4 weeks. They shouldn't be getting beat by that many. They shouldn't be giving up so much defensively. Offensively, you win some, you make some shots, you don't make some shots. The scouting report is going. I thought Bristol adjusted to Surrey far better than Surrey adjusted to Bristol. So they adjusted to Cam Gooden a lot better than the other way around. I think Surrey are desperate for Andrew Lawrence to give them 15 minutes of offense creation off the bench. But putting your trust in Andrew Lawrence being healthy is a dangerous thing to do if you're going to base a season on that because he's regularly hurt. And then we had this kind of conversation popped up on Twitter as well about I think Drew Lasker was on it about yeah, you can play the young guys, but you're not necessarily going to win straight away. You know what I mean? And it's tough. It's tough when you haven't quite got the group that you would need. I think Hunt is struggling. I don't think I think he's a little bit like DeBose. He's come back from his injury. He's clearly a good guy. He's 6'9", he can play, but he doesn't have the mobility that he had last year or the confidence yet. And it's got to be a confidence thing, as well as a physical health thing. James and Adelican, Robinson, I think probably outplayed Adelican in this game. Robinson was really good. Really, solid, efficient. Did exactly what the team wanted. Doesn't do anything which is kind of out of his skill set. Gets where he needs to get to. And so they struggled. And then I think they're probably a wing, and a little bit like Caledonia. I think they could probably do with a wing. I mean, I'm not saying Paddy at Wang, but somebody of that kind of ilk who is going to give him a little bit more rebounding from the wing spot, because I think Josh Steele is kind of on his own there at the moment, and that's a bit of a struggle at that. I mean, so when you're playing those guys, you're playing your young guys who aren't going to be there every night. They're not there. They're picking it up. They're learning the game at that speed, at that level. You're then having to go the other end of the scale and play Teo probably for more minutes than you would want to play Teo at the far end of his career against a team like that, which is athletic and which is running. And they played without Leslie Smith, who's been good for them. Thomas Edwards is big for them. Thomas Edwards is the kind of guy, you're not sure what he does, but he does it.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
You're not sure what he does, but he does it. You're not sure how he does it, but he does it. I mean, and for a guy who hasn't played, he came in and knocked down shots, and that's a big thing. And he just a very helpful player to have. So really kind of optimistic for them on the basis of that. A little bit unsure as to how much Surrey's defense assisted them. I never quite understood what Surrey were willing to give up in that game. You don't want Katie Johnson getting straight line drives. You don't want McCormick shooting threes. And you don't want Tennyson shooting threes. But everything else, if Lewis or Sheffield or Walsh, they're the guys you can help off a little bit, make those guys beat you. And I didn't think they really did a really good job of that.
Ray, 20.6 assists, steal 13, Gooden, 11.5 assists, 38% from the floor, 6 of 21 for 3. Johnson, almost a triple-double, 18 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists. Lewis, 14, Thomas Edwards, 13. Both of those two were 5 of 7 from the floor.
That's big. 26 points on 14 shots. Yeah, that's big.
Let's go to yesterday. Sheffield Sharks 84, Caledonia Gladiators 75 after overtime. A debut for Rodney Chapman the third, and obviously no Mitchell. He's gone to the G League.
He's gone. Yeah, he's gone through a tryout for the G League.
Yeah.
That's where they're at the moment.
Yeah. Caledonia with 8 of the first 10 points. Not a lot in the first quarter. The biggest action in the first quarter we didn't quite see. It was the blood injury to EC Matthews. There was a lot of blood.
Fortunately, I was watching this game. I'd been to the shops, so I came in and watched this game from about past, which meant I get to fast forward all the way through the blood injury. Didn't have to sit there and find something else to do. Caledonia really competed in this game. They for what they had, they played together and played quite hard, and with Stuckman in particular in the first half carried them. Sheffield still kind of figuring out what they are. They obviously Ocherobia has gone from hardly playing to being kind of the main centre until Coke comes back. They've got their point guard in now, but obviously they've lost their fulcrum kind of athletic superstar big man. So do they replace him, or do they settle for kind of the Ocherobia Coke tandem and let everybody else kind of play around them? I mean, either we'll soon see. And obviously Nixon's coming off a career game as well. The blood thing, 20 minutes is a bit tough for me to take, I'm afraid. This isn't. I get that you've got to be hygienic and all of that stuff. And I get there may be blood in various different areas of the court, but it's one of the things that I think we have to be a little bit better than. To be honest, I think it's like, to be honest, it's like the floor wipers. I'm sorry, it's not a job for a 10-year-old. We need to have a little bit more, and it's all volunteers, so it's very hard to turn around and say, oh, we should be doing this better, we should be doing that better. But we have to think of the product in the gym. And I think 20 minutes because of something that is reasonably foreseeable that's going to happen in a basketball game. And it is reasonably foreseeable that someone's going to get some blood to their nose.
There's a lot of blood, though, a lot more than you would usually see, to be fair.
Yeah, maybe.
And because he went from the middle of the court across, it seemed.
Was he zigzagging? Was he?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I didn't see. I was fast forwarding it as well, but there looked like there was a lot.
Well, okay, fair enough. But anyway, still, it's a frustration. I'm sure there'll be many people telling us why it can't be done quicker.
Yeah. That was kind of the pattern of the game. Glad's getting a few shots ahead. Sheffield coming back occasionally, taking the lead. Anything you want to pick up, or should we just scoot to the end?
Not really. You're expecting kind of Sheffield to kind of pull away. Gross. I thought the difference in the game of the styles, not necessarily the difference in who won and who lost, but the difference of styles was, again, it was quickness v size, and it's kind of a repeat kind of thing with Caledonia. They have a lot of size, but they don't have a lot of quickness. So you look at the box score at the end, they committed 32 fouls, right? And they're committing a lot of fouls. And the reason they're committing a lot of fouls isn't because they can't play defense. It's because they are struggling to deal with the quicker players almost at every position that they're facing. Now, that's fine if you can turn that around and utilize your size and rebound and get the ball close to the rim and then kick out for shots and that type of stuff. But that's hard in this league because it's a constant repetition of of small, quick guys coming at you. Nobody's hesitating, nobody's waiting. And again, the Bulls didn't play in the fourth quarter or in overtime, so I can only assume he's hurt. Otherwise, you can't imagine why Gareth wouldn't have him on the court at some point. So they were struggling. I think it was one of those games where I never quite thought they were going to win.
Mm.
Didn't think they quite had the offense.
You mentioned it a little earlier. Let's get to the end. Let's get to that.
No, let's just get to the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Go on.
Well, when the clock ran for 3 seconds with the TV cameraman running across the court.
Oh, I was forwarding. I missed that bit.
Oh, you missed that bit. Oh,
Spoilers.
yes. No, no.
Yeah,
Go back to
spoilers.
it. Yes, it's yeah. I'd have to stop the game after 2.5 seconds because the cameraman's just managed to get off the court, having ran all the
Oh,
way across. And I did have a
I
bit.
think I jumped to 9:42 when I
Oh, what
was
a
trying
mistake!
to estimate 2 minutes on from the end of the third quarter. So I missed that.
Yeah, what a mistake. And I did have a bit of a bit of rage tweeting during this game about the number of views of players' shorts we got from a baseline camera and the number of replays that we got during the game. But it got better in the second half, happily. So hopefully it will continue to do so.
Mm.
And for those who are silently raging, I am your champion.
Champion of the silent rages.
Yeah,
Let's
I
go
am.
back
Yeah.
to that Stuckman foul.
Go,
2:05 to go in the
go for
game.
Wonder Horse. Yeah, go on.
Stuckman biting on a pump fake. Uh, got called for the foul, threw the ball off the advertising in frustration. So a technical was called. That was on the bench because the original foul was his fourth foul, and it was a 4 free throw result. So they went from two down to two up.
So the
He's
original foul was his fifth foul, was it?
yes, yeah.
Yeah. So the next one was on the bench.
Yeah.
Right. Um. Well, again, I wasn't in the best, you're not in the best position on the camera, but I did manage to freeze frame this. And my initial thought was that Chapman put the ball there and Stuckman took it off him. You know,
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
that
I
was
thought it
mine.
was. I didn't look at it that closely. I just thought it was a
Yeah,
foul.
that Stuckman took it off him, and almost like he wasn't actually into his shooting motion when the ball was there.
Mm,
Stuckman comes down it before he's into his shooting motion, and I thought he went across the front of him. So I don't think it was actually almost a shot attempt. He was lining up to shoot it, but there. So it's tough to say because it did look like there may have been some contact we couldn't see on the TV. And I'm sure Josh has seen some contact, which is why he's called it. But I did, Stuckman's been a guy who has been mentioned in the commentary. He's come from Lev Gold in Spain.
mm,
A different level of physicality is allowable in those games. He's had a few. He got a very rough call at Newcastle, um, on a call for a foul on night when he was basically just straight up, and I think he struggled to adjust to what it is. So it was a bit unfortunate that it was him. The technical. Mm,
my take on it
mm,
was he threw the ball off the board. Gareth did a really good job, by the way, of scooping the ball up to try and sort of cover it.
yeah.
But I think you throw the ball away like that. If the board wasn't there and it had gone down the court, it's 100% a technical. So I think,
Yeah, but if the board is there, you're throwing it because the board is there, and it's going to come back to you.
yeah,
So,
there's
so, so the only way it
consequences
can be
for
a
that.
technical is if it's regarded as visual dissent.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah, I think you've got the argument. It's just as much frustration as dissent.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I get that. I get that. But in that situation, it'll be regarded as dissent rather. It's always that one like when they bounce the ball down like that and you
Yeah,
sort of and catch it and you sort of go, well, by catching it, you've stopped it. But if remember Teddy Allen last year
yeah,
at Sheffield threw one off the wall when he got called for something and
yeah,
got a
yeah.
technical.
The wall, the back, the kind of the back stanchion of the basket. I'm kind of doing the Steve McQueen Great Escape. 4 feet from the sideline. I wouldn't have objected if the ref had just swallowed his whistle on that. I'll be honest. And there's an interesting point because approximately 30 seconds later. Oh, you'll get to it in a second. Yeah, go on.
I'm trying to think which one it was now that I'm going to get to. So it's a 2 point game. Barnes ties it from the free throw line. Anderson hits the three,
I missed
81.
that. Oh, actually, well, what happened was what you missed was Chapman got called for an offensive foul on Onwas.
I haven't got there yet.
All right, okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
haven't got there yet.
anyway, yeah. Well, yeah. Firstly, Barnes missed an and one. He should have made 6-9. He should have made. He got the two foul shots. Then Fraser Malcolm. I'm not sure why he wasn't taking up Jamel Anderson. You can't be letting Jamel Anderson shoot a kind of set 3 point shot off the catch when he's got no advantage. You know, we've got to be better than you got to be better than that and taking that shot away because Jamel's going to make it. So that's 71-68. Yeah, go on.
Onwas heel on the out of bounds turns it over, but then this is the Chapman push off. Gets
Yeah,
called for an offensive foul on the push off to
and then
for
turned in one
Malcolm.
motion and kind of threw the ball back to the ref, same ref.
Mm.
And I thought he threw it with a little bit of meaning. I don't
Uh,
think it was enough for a technical,
yeah,
but watch it back. I mean, you see what you know. There's delivering the ball to the ref, and there's throwing
yeah,
it
yeah,
at a certain
yeah,
speed, and the
yeah,
ref
yeah.
was probably far enough away, whereby Josh Ball, whereby the same ref, whereby he had the time to do it.
Mm.
If I was, as I say, that was. I did think you've set yourself up for the by calling the first one,
Mm.
not calling that. It's.
So where are we? 101 to go. Hill with the miss, but Ali Hodgic, he came from the 3 point line. He was setting a screen up top, came
And
all the
dunked
way
it.
from the 3 point line, dunked it in. 71-70. Chapman misses layup, tip doesn't quite go in, out of bounds for a Sharks ball. They call a timeout. Ocherobia is blocked. There's about 31 seconds or so left in the game at this point. Anderson fouls with 21.3 seconds, sort of arm around the waist foul.
You had to call that one, I think.
You have to call that, I thought.
Yeah.
Ali Hodgic, two free throws, goes 1 for 2. So it's tied at 71-71. Sharks run the clock down. Groves misses an air ball. Nixon catches it, lays it in, but I didn't even think it was close, to be honest with you. It was way off.
It was probably about 4 or 5 tenths a second off.
I thought it was more than that, to be honest with you.
Really? No. In any event, what we got was a nice clear signal straight away.
Yeah,
None,
yeah, yeah,
none of this three refs conferring with each
yeah.
other and having a chat and then the table joining in and everybody and creating the brouhaha and making a decision out of nothing.
And it was the ref who had the best angle of both
It's the
clock
referee's
and
job. It
shot.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
was his
yeah,
job. And
yeah.
on top, and it was an easier one to call because the ball and the basket were very close together.
Yeah,
So it's different when it's on the 3 point line because you
yeah,
can't do two things at once.
yeah.
But then again, of course, we have a league whereby we still don't have red lights around the basket in every gym.
Mm, mm,
And if we didn't have the red light around the basket, that becomes a toss up.
mm.
That's the reality of it because you can't be looking at the ball and the clock at the same time.
Although in that case, because they've got the clocks on top of the
It's
basket,
close, but it's still
you
hard.
might be able to
The
see
red
it.
light makes it easy.
Yeah.
Now, beyond that, though, the interesting thing about that play, and we've missed out the fact that Caledonia at the end of the first half ran an abortion of a play where they didn't appear to know how long was to go on the clock, and ended up with Faro kind of spinning out for a pass to the 3 point line at the time the buzzer was going. Which is this is professional basketball. That can't be happening.
Mm,
The thing with Sheffield was what was really interesting to me was this is Chapman's first game.
mm,
And he's got the ball. All right. Now Nixon had 38, 9 and 9
mm.
last week. He also made a 3 point shot with a second to go to beat Leicester in the playoffs, not so long ago, about 7 Sheffield Sharks games ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. He has been, ultimately the guy for the Sharks the past probably 3 months across the two seasons.
Mm,
And you got a guy who's coming into the first game, suddenly he's got the ball dribbling it a lot.
mm,
And Nixon's kind of on the sideline. Credit to Nixon, he went and made a play, the shot just didn't go in time for him to do it. But he's just on the sideline waving his hand. It's like, okay, that's going to be interesting. That's going to be an interesting dynamic going forward.
mm,
Because what we saw at Chapman in the game is he's a guy who is looking for his shot. He had 11 foul shots in this game. Obviously, he got 4 of them on the 3 point shot on the technical. But he had the ball in his hand. There were some possessions which he was effective. He went at Hughes. He got an and one on Hughes. Other possessions whereby he probably over dribbled a little bit. That's his first game, getting used to his teammates. But it's a massive dynamic change.
mm,
And in relation to the last second play, if I'm Nixon, I want the ball.
mm.
Okay, so we're gonna have to now. So Chapman's gonna have to have the right personality to fit into that, because they had something going with Nixon. You don't want to bring in one guy to take away from the other guy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that's just something to watch for the future. I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm just saying it's just something to watch for the future. That surprised me when Nixon basically didn't go and get that basketball, because he's the guy who won't have the ball. And what they did was Caledonia's defense, which was pretty on point the whole game. They did a good job. They doubled Chapman. They didn't let him split. He caught the ball. He had to pick up the ball probably 40 feet from the basket. All he had was Groves kind of flaring out there, and he's facing the wrong way, and he's 4 feet outside the 3-point line, so he's got to force one up off the dribble. So it was great defense. But you know, you want the guy who's been around, and you want the guys who have been around to be making that play, I think.
So it went to overtime. Sharks with the first 10 points of overtime. Both teams ran the same five all the way through. No substitutions in overtime. There were only 4 rebounds in overtime. Sheffield got them all as well. It was
I just
quite
thought
demanding.
Caledonia just looked done, and they had basically one guy who could dribble, which was Hill. Everybody else, they got Fraser Malcolm playing the 2, Prince Onmas playing the 3, Barnes at the 4, and Ali Hodzic at the 5, and they couldn't get into anything. I can only assume, obviously, there are 2 guards down, Jimenez and Whelan. Dubose hasn't played for the 4th quarter and probably part of the 3rd quarter as well. So he must be hurt, and they left. That's all they had, and they just could not find a way of creating any offense. They turned the ball over, and Sheffield's quickness, wore out. There's a really strong argument in British basketball that quickness generally wins out over size. Size is useful and quick size is great, but ultimately, Sheffield were able to create shots in the fourth in overtime and make plays, and Caledonia couldn't get good looks. And they just looked a bit worn down for the effort that they had. They had the many times, if a team on the road, you've got to win in regulation.
Yeah.
It's hard to win in the overtime, I think.
Groves, 10 of 16 for 23 points. Chapman, 17 points. Nixon, 4 of 14 for 16 points. They were 37% from the floor, Sheffield. They were 18 of 52 from 2-point range and still won the game.
Yeah, I mean, Groves is interesting, isn't he? Because he doesn't fit a prototype. He's a 6'8" wing who moves like he's 6'5". And he's got a nice touch, and we know he can shoot the ball. I thought he was able to get far too much separation from Caledonia because of his quickness, surprisingly, because even though he's that size. And once he gets separation, he's able to change direction. He certainly has one good change of direction in him and finish. So he's getting more and more confident. Be interesting to see. This is the argument for Sheffield about not bringing in another big.
Yeah.
Because it allows him to play at the 4 spot as opposed to the 3 spot. He plays at the 4 spot. He's a tough cover. The 3 spot, he's got a bit of size, but he's not going to go and post up that much. So he's going to be guarded by a smaller, quicker guy. But at the 4 spot, if they run the right stuff, then it's going to be tough to guard him. So if they bring in another big guy, then that will be Kokot, Charobia, and maybe a tweener 4-5. He might have to drop down to 3 spots, gives him more size, but gives him less of an advantage.
Stuckman, 20 points, 8 of 12 shooting. Ali Hodzic, 13 and 9 rebounds. Hill, 10.6 assists. And the final game, Cheshire Phoenix, 90. Newcastle Eagles, 82. Kristen with 10 early on. Nick's up 16-6. Mark Stuttle calls a timeout midway through the quarter, and it flipped on its head. 11-2 run, 18-7, 17.
Yeah, I've already talked about that a little bit. Newcastle's second unit's been better than the first unit. And actually, Cheshire are really interesting because they're zagging whilst everybody else in the league is zigging, to use a phrase. They are just about the only team in the league that's playing proper 5-out for much of the game. And what 5-out means is 5 players on the perimeter, and they can do that because normally the big guy, who is the guy who's not on the perimeter for most teams, is in their case Skylar White, who wants to be nowhere but the perimeter.
Yeah.
So if he's going to be out there, that's 5-out. And now the advantage of playing 5-out basically is that
assuming you have a guy who can shoot like Skylar.
Oh, assuming you have a guy who can shoot like that, yeah, absolutely. Or indeed, or can just keep the defense honest with his shot. But the advantage is that the opposition would generally seek to defend player for player, but also have somebody in what we call the help side, which is under the basket. You want to have a second defender who can kind of cheat and make the lane look crowded and just kind of get in the way a little bit. All right. Now, with Cheshire, that's extremely difficult. It's probably more difficult last year, but it's very, very difficult this year because with all those guys on the perimeter, the moment that you take a step off of White or you take a step off
Well, because
Kristen
your
in the
logic would
corner,
be your logic would be you'd step off from the opposite corner, which means somebody's
yeah,
open in the corner.
which is generally Kristen.
Yeah.
And Kristen's a great corner shooter, and Holden, of course, is a great passer. He's 6'5" and he flings it around. So where is your help going to come from? The answer is, well, we can't really. So that your defensive game plan is, well, let's make them beat us with twos. Let's make them get to the rim. But to do that, you have to be disciplined, and you have to have a big guy because there's a lot of there's a lot of screens being set on the perimeter by Cheshire, which are basically all misdirection. But you have to have a big guy who can defend one-on-one. Now, what happened in this game was that Cheshire played Del Pesh off the court because he was struggling to defend one-on-one, which means that Defoe had to play 30 minutes. Because what Newcastle have done really well this year is switch on screens. Now, normally switching on screens is a bit dangerous because you create mismatches. So if, for instance, Holden gets matched up on Cole Long, if Cole Long's player sets a screen, and you'd fancy Holden on the quickness. But Newcastle have been playing with Alan Aikens at the 4, and he's basically got the defensive capabilities of a guard. So, if you're Okoro, Knight, even Llewellyn, Spencer, Alan Aikens, they can all switch. And basically the offensive team gets no advantage. Okay. So therefore you've got to put the the centre man into the screen, which Cheshire do quite well because what Skyler does when he screens is he immediately splits to the 3-point line, which means the big guy who's defending the screen has to decide whether to stay and defend the basket, which he's not allowed to do. So he's got to run up to Skyler, which leaves you one-on-one with the guard one-on-one. And most players in this league, one-on-one for long enough can score. So they are doing that basically differently to every other team in the league because nobody else in the league is playing 5 out. Everybody else in the league is playing with traditional centres, be it Defoe and Delpesh, be it Ali Hodzic and Hughes, Thompson at Leicester, Thompson Shelton at Leicester, Bristol with Robinson, London with whoever they've got playing for them. All these guys, Sheffield with Ocherobi and Cook. No one's playing like that, which means that with Cheshire, it's all about your scouting report. You've got to be really, really disciplined and really show attention to detail. When Newcastle got the right players in the court in this game, they were able to do that defensively. The problem was they only had 6 of them. So between that 5-minute mark where they gave up 16 points in the first 5 minutes, and Llewellyn and Del Pesh hardly played after that. Right? The next 25 minutes, Newcastle gave up 40 points. Which is like 16 a quarter against Cheshire, which you're going to live with because Cheshire's defense isn't probably as good as their offense. And that's because at the beginning of the second half, he basically benched all the starters.
Well, that was the point I was going to make. It was 40-40 at halftime. Okoro scoring freely for the Eagles in that second quarter. 4 of the starters didn't start the second half for Newcastle. It was only, I think, was it Josh Ward-Hibbett was the only one who was the starter, which I was trying to think. I can't remember. Sometimes you see 1 or 2 and maybe even 3, but 4.
Well, basically, effectively, Llewellyn didn't play at all. Del Pesh played 30 seconds in the second half. You then had, Alan Aikens and Knight. And you had to start Okoro because Okoro was, coruscatingly good in the first half. In fact, Okoro in this game was +8, and given that Newcastle lost by 8, and he played 28 minutes, that means they lost the 12 minutes he didn't play by 16. And that was actually, I thought, quite palpable on watching it, the difference in their offense when he was on the game. So he had to start Okoro. But what that did was they got off to a good start, and I think it was the right thing to do because you can't keep riding the same thing. At the beginning of the first and the third quarter for the next 2 or 3 games, Newcastle dug themselves a hole. So it becomes a personnel thing. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. So I thought it was a brave move to do that. The disadvantage was unfortunately in the fourth quarter, whereby they wore down and the defense suffered in the fourth quarter because they were playing players down effectively against a team which is relentless offensively.
Yeah. You kind of touched on it. Eagles got up 7 in the third quarter with that start. 2 white threes, one from Clemens, tied at 50, 52-52. Let's go.
Yeah,
Uh,
wait. I mean, I've always felt it's going to be a difficult game for Newcastle, primarily because Cheshire got the wake-up call last week and hadn't played since.
mm,
Skyler wasn't going to go shoot 2 of 26 again or
yeah,
anything
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Their attention, I think, they were feeling a bit happy about themselves. Sheffield came in and beat them, gave up 102 points to them. There's always going to be more focus from Cheshire in that situation. In the meantime, Newcastle have had to go to Caledonia and play a game, and they've still got issues at some of their positions.
mm,
So I always thought it was going to be a really kind of maybe a game too far for Newcastle. Um, but what Cheshire did really well was they adjusted as well,
mm.
which we'll get to in a second.
Well, I was going to go right to the end. 3 minutes to go, 78-77. Atwood back to basket, 2 plays in a row, 2 post moves. That was an 8-0 run, and that was the key.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it happened a little bit before that because I think Newcastle were probably took when they took Okoro out, the 7-0 run came, and the Okoro had an ice pack on his thigh, I think, so that was an issue there. He didn't. I'm sure he didn't want to bring Defoe back at the beginning of the fourth quarter.
No, he had
Having played
37
9 minutes,
seconds or something.
37 seconds, but he decided that he had to because he was going to ride that. And particularly given that Darius wasn't shooting the ball well, and he was 1 of 9.
Yeah, he was.
His offense wasn't there. So it shows kind of that he didn't trust anybody else basically to guard Skylar White, because if you look at it, or Teague, because if you look at it, remember the 3 that you pointed out that Aaron Aikens gave up, just an appalling 3 to give up. Because you've got to know your scouting report. Aaron Aikens struggled in this game, and I thought was a bit freaked out by Cheshire's size, and I thought I had a little bit of a meltdown by the end. But what Cheshire did really well in the fourth quarter when they came back was, one, they exploited Newcastle's tiredness of having to defend, and Newcastle was struggling to defend without fouling by the end. But Ben changed his lineup as well. He went bigger than he probably has done most of the season, and which meant that Atwood was at the 3. So you've got Holden, who's 6'5". You've got Kristen, who is 6'5". You've got Atwood, who is a strong 6'5". You've got Teague, and you've got Skylar White. So you basically got 5 guys who are 6'5" to 6'7", who all know each other. Other than Atwood, because they've played in Cheshire before anyway. Teague and White haven't played together. Who all got specific skill sets. And what they did a really good job of was going away from, Newcastle's take the threes away, because Newcastle did a good job taking the threes away from Cheshire in this game. They did what you have to do. That was a good scouting report. It was relatively well implemented. But what then happened was Cheshire adjusted to that in-game. And what they were able to do by going big was to get Atwood matched up on guards. And what Newcastle didn't do, or weren't able to do, was react quickly enough to send the appropriate double team help, which they needed to do, because Atwood in the post with 5 dribbles is going to score on nearly everybody with nobody else coming to help. You've got to show some help. You've got to do something. Now, the problem with Cheshire, we already talked about, where do you help? Do you help off White? No. You help off Teague? Well, he hasn't made a shot, but he can make a shot. Are you going to help off Holden? Well, if you give Holden a line to the basket, he's just going to crash for an offensive rebound, because you've seen what force he is there. Do you help off Christian? No. So it's very difficult. You've got to be really quick and really decisive in what you do. But at that point in time, I thought Newcastle were tired of mind. I thought some of the players were tired of body, having played the Friday night in Glasgow and the Sunday in Cheshire. But I thought they were tired of mind. I didn't think they made good defensive decisions, which is evidenced by the fact that Cheshire scored 34 points in the fourth quarter, having scored 40 in the previous 25 minutes. So those 2 plays by Atwood were absolutely critical. And with the Okoro on the bench, Newcastle's offense was, they do score points. Sometimes you wonder how they score points, because it's a bit, it's not what you describe as pure offensive. They've had the point guard scored 7 points in 5 games. But Newcastle do manage to put points on the board. It's just that you wonder whether they've got, a way of making that sustainable again in the long term with the roster they've got at the moment.
I couldn't bring myself to watch back that last 30 seconds.
Oh, well, before we get to that, by the way,
it was a mess of points. Well,
I mean, it was bizarre. We'll talk about it in a second. We got to talk a little bit about, the kind of throw throw a ball in the air and see where it lands, enforcement of unsportsmanlike fouls.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you picked out the one that the long foul on Chris, not whoever it was in transition, which was a clear unsportsmanlike foul. You know, because it was too. You know, initially I thought, oh, he just got tangled up, but no, he didn't. He reached out. You know, he grabbed him. Yeah, we've seen in the Glasgow game, in the Caledonia game, we saw Malcolm get called for half of that. Albeit it was kind of a reach around, but even so, it was half. You know, I don't know if I don't know what the criteria they're adopting are at the moment, to be honest. I'm really quite perplexed about it because there's it needs sorting out because these calls are critical. So if someone wants to text me and tell me exactly what the criteria is, and whether or what the advice is, or whether there's any information being given to refs in relation to not calling things or calling things, or whether it's just the same as it ever was, I'd love to know because it doesn't look the same as it ever was. I mean, you know, the long one was egregious. Sorry, yeah, but the last 30 seconds, yeah. I mean, this was brain melt stuff, wasn't it? Brain fade stuff.
I couldn't watch it back, so I haven't written it down.
All right. Well, basically, I think
it was just both ways.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There were fouls. You're going, what are you fouling for? Why?
Yeah,
I mean,
there was the Newcastle foul got an offensive rebound, and there was a foul on the offensive rebound on the foul shot. Then I think Cheshire come down and Ward Hibbert, you know, fouls when there's like 19 seconds gone on the shot clock, which is bizarre. And they do play, you know,
and from 35 feet as well.
And from 35 feet away, which is just like, you know, again, tired minds. And then I think Newcastle probably did deliberately foul that last possession to take away a three, to put them on the line for two. I think that came out of timeout. Which you can argue was that is that the right strategy or not? But you know you're going to get some time to get the ball back. You give up a point. You gave up 1 point. So probably on that you would probably live.
You mess the inbound up and you actually give up 3.
Yeah, well then you've given up 33 or 31 in the quarter already. So you know you gave up 1 point in that possession. Maybe you live with it. But then on the inbounds, I think Aaron Aikens' head had just spiraled because you see Spencer. I think Spencer's telling him to put the ball down. He's pointing almost like somebody else is due to take the ball out. He's forgotten. He doesn't know. He doesn't run the baseline, which he can do. And then Ward Hibbert's running, not even looking at the ball when he throws it to him. And you know they've just had a timeout, so they must have talked about something. And I think it's a young player, young team, but the whole thing is there's not an over. When you're looking at the last 2 minutes of games in the past, you know, all the games we've watched so far, you wouldn't say that it was kind of an overexposure of the word smart so far.
No.
You know, I really wouldn't, you know, whether it's decisions to shoot, whether it's decisions not to shoot, decisions to foul, you know.
And I get it for guys, you know, the whole points difference thing, it's sort of weird and people don't really understand
You've
it.
just got a timeout, you know, this is your instruction, follow instruction. You know, that instruction was, you know, was not to throw the ball at somebody's side when they weren't even looking at it. You know, it was just all very bizarre. So I thought it was a game too far for Newcastle, particularly against Cheshire because of the way they play, because they're so different and you've got to play them so differently. And I think you've got to have your whole roster ready to play them differently. I mean, Cheshire's perspective, you know, they're playing 7 guys basically because Rock played 6 minutes, Ove played 4 minutes. You know, and the reason Ove plays 4 minutes is because Ben is wanting to continue to kind of push the 5 out stuff. But if Ove comes in and plays 14 or 15 minutes, then that changes the way that they play when they're on the court. It can still be effective. It's different, but it makes it easier for Delpesh.
It makes it easier for Newcastle
it makes it easier for Newcastle to defend because they're not constantly under the pressure on the perimeter. The way that Newcastle are defending now, a lot of teams will say, "Oh, okay, you make those threes, we will live." Now, to be fair, Newcastle, they didn't say that. They said, we're going to take those threes away, but with that comes the pressure on the ball. With that comes the pressure to defend without fouling. And they didn't, because Cheshire are attacking all the time, you know, you have to be really disciplined.
Because the other thing we didn't really talk about in spacing the floor like that, 5 out, is actually the lane to the basket is wide open, in essence. It is.
You've got to keep your man in front of you.
If you've got that first step, you're all the way to the rim.
So you get a switch. You've got to know the scout report. You've got to know. And Kristen a couple of times got the got to his right hand. It's one step. It's a layup. There's nobody there. So you've got to keep your man in front of you all time, all game, without giving up a kind of a dare 3-point shot. So you've got to be close enough not to let him shoot the three, but far enough away not to let him get a shoulder past you. And you've also got to know the scouting report time and time again in relation to who you want to shoot the ball. And if it's Kristen, you're gonna have to make him dribble left because he wants to dribble right. You know, and Scott Grayson, when he comes in, you maybe help off him a little bit because he hasn't proved he can shoot. He's a great 3-point shooter yet. So, but he didn't play much. Why? Because he didn't want anybody helping off. And so I thought it was a really interesting chess match. I thought it was actually a way that I would have tried to defend Cheshire. I thought for 2.5 quarters in the middle of the game, they did a really good job of it. And I think to beat Cheshire, you have to defend them. I mean, okay, Sheffield scored 102 and beat them, but the reality is, Prentice Nixon scored, had the game of his life.
Yeah.
That isn't repeatable. So you have to find a way of slowing them down. So Newcastle did for 2.5 quarters, but the beginning and the end, 50 points in 15 minutes. They didn't, and that's the way that Cheshire are going to continue to go on you. So they're going to be a good team. I think Newcastle are going to be a good team. I think Newcastle have a little bit more room to grow because they've got some obvious holes which need sorting out. But it was a good game. It was probably the Newcastle, and Okoro is kind of vaulting himself up there into kind of top 10 player in the league, top 5 player in the league at the moment, because the way he scored the ball in this game, going to his right, going to his left, pulling up everything, it was the ease which he did it. I thought, which was probably the most impressive. It was a Nixon style game, but he didn't need to dribble the ball as much as Nixon, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Atwood 23.7 of 12 shooting, Kristen 20.6 of 10 shooting.
43 points on 22 shots.
Yeah.
Atwood in particular is a good pickup for them when if they're going to be able to kind of use the way that they play to for him to be the adjustment. It helps he's knocking down a couple of threes as well. He's probably going to shoot them more regularly. But those post-ups killed the game. And that was because it was a change. It was different to what they'd done. It was it was a smart thing to do at the end of a game. And Newcastle didn't react quickly enough to it. Sorry.
Holden 18.7 rebounds. They were 32 of 40 from the free throw line.
Yeah.
Okoro 27 points, Knight 15, Ward Hibbert had 16, 21 offensive rebounds for Newcastle, 14 second chance.
Of course, that's the downside of the 5-out stuff because you don't play with a particularly big team. You don't play, White is generally the guy who's under the basket. He's not really a dominant rebounder, and you're relying on guards to get your rebounds and guards and wings. So if people are asking, well, why doesn't everybody do this if it works like it does for Cheshire? Because you need a very specific team, and you also give up stuff as well. And what they gave up was 21 points in offensive rebounds. What they gain, of course, is that when one of those guards gets one of those rebounds, and they've got big guards, they're off. They're off, and then the other team's still rebounding, and all you need is a two-step advantage. And Kristen or Holden or Scott Grayson or any of those guys, they're at the rim. So it's a real contrast. I like the games which are a contrast to styles. I thought there was a lot to watch in that game.
So I've copied the group stages out and they don't seem to be right. I'm just checking, is that me being stupid or is this not updated properly? There we go. It's me being stupid, I guess, unless I picked up last week's piece.
I get the stuff.
Newcastle topped the North, 4 wins and 1 defeat. Cheshire in second place, 3 wins and 1 defeat. Sheffield are in third, 2 and 2. Caledonia 2 and 3. Manchester 0 and 4. And in the south, as it loads, Leicester 2 and 0, Bristol 2 and 1, Surrey 1 and 2, and London 0 and 2.
Yeah, that sounds a bit too early to talk. The North's up for grabs. The schedule, I think, probably helps Cheshire this week because Newcastle are in Slovakia on Wednesday, and then no doubt flying back probably via Stansted or somewhere ridiculous, to get back up north. So Cheshire have a real chance to take control of the group this Friday. If they win that game, they go 4 and one with the head against Newcastle. And then you're looking at Newcastle, Sheffield, and a very
They'd
outside.
also have the head-to-head. They also have the head-to-head against Sheffield already as well.
Yeah, because of the 3-point shot that Clemens
Yeah,
made.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so it's their real chance to take control of the group. On Friday night. Should be a good game. It's just a shame that we've got almost a two-tier league at the minute. Sorry, that's probably a bit political. We got the north where games are being played thick and fast, in the south whereby for some reason we couldn't have Leicester or London even playing a game this weekend.
Well, I think the darts might be the reason why Leicester didn't play a game.
I'm not I'm blaming Leicester or London, but it's just they could have played an away game, but
Could have played that away
they've
game.
already played them last week, so they can't play London last week. It's a bit unfortunate because Caledonia are going through an absolute beast of a schedule. This week for Newcastle is pretty similar, and we're not seeing anything. You've got a guy team. I want to see more of Leicester. I want to see more of London, and we're just not seeing it. So anything where one team's played 6 games, another team's played 2 isn't great. And of course, it all comes down because it all comes down to the fact that we all know that Sheffield is in the south.
It's not what it says on the motor on the M1, Dave. It says the north.
The North Sheffield, well, it says the North from all the way from beg your pardon, from Basingstoke, doesn't it? I mean, North um,
Yeah, but
but
it says
Sheffield,
the north and the Midlands, and then it stops saying the Midlands after
so in the
about
past, right? In the
28,
past, quite properly,
29.
we've split the groups the way they are now, with the advantage
Yeah,
that Plymouth is in the south. No one
yeah,
disagrees with that.
yeah,
So that's 5v5.
yeah.
But now we have a situation whereby, it's far quicker to get from Sheffield to London than it is to get from Sheffield to Glasgow. And arguably they should be in the south. Discuss.
Well, I'm not even going there. I'll let somebody else bite on that one. But yeah, it's the north, north of England, my friend.
North of England, yeah.
Well, it's all the south, isn't it? From East Kilbride,
It is, yeah.
there's probably the same distance again north, isn't it, to the coast?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you can get from East Kilbride to, because you're on the M74, is it? Which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
goes
yeah,
to the west
yeah,
coast of Scotland. You can get all the way down to the northwest from Caledonia quite quick.
yeah,
Which is why we occasionally see Scottish refs down there, I think.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but anyway, yeah.
We can get Rob Hickman to Bray Head, apparently.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. I don't think I think I'm sure Eddie Yancey's ever beaten Newcastle. He might have been there once, might be wrong.
I'm sure Ed's been up. I'm sure Ed's been up there.
Maybe once,
I'm sure
maybe
he's up
once.
there.
But
I saw him on the side of Tesco's on Saturday.
really,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Every little helps.
oh, very good.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I just think we I want to see more of the other teams. I want to
yeah,
see
yeah,
what we've
yeah,
got.
yeah.
I do. And I can't say that any coach in the world is wanting 2 weeks off, 2 weeks into the season.
No, no.
And so yeah, there are things for us to sort. Should also add that just on the question of the league, I didn't mention it. I think it was only I listened to it on Tuesday morning, but the Caledonia owner did a very um, good interview on a podcast. I think it's BTR podcast. I don't know if you heard that.
I've not heard it yet. It's
No,
on my list to listen to.
yeah,
I might get
and
to it
he was
tomorrow
he
when I
was.
drive
I
home.
thought it was very very well informed. Um, not even sure it was entirely discreet. But it struck me that all the things that we've been banging on about for the past 5 years were actually being repeated by somebody in a position of power.
Mm,
The vast majority of them talking about um, the duties on the league, the duties, the steps that need to be taken, the academies, the culture, the building that I think he called it a kind of a basketball nation
mm,
and a basketball economy and all the phrases that we've been used. And it was kind of a breath of fresh air. And I raise it because obviously we talked a lot about the kind of the direction that 777 went in. And as we kind of got into talking about it more and more as time went on, we kind of became less and less enamored by it. I think that would be fair to say.
mm.
So now if we have a situation whereby in 10 weeks, something good has come about, and the attitudes of the owners and are such as explained by Mr. Timoney,
Mm.
um, then that can only be really, really good. I recognize the conversation because, 10 years ago, I'm sitting well, probably not 10 years ago, maybe 7 years, but when we just about to build the arena at Newcastle, I'm sitting behind the desk of having a trustees meeting about the community foundation, saying we want to build a basketball region, not a nation, a region. We want
Yeah,
to build.
yeah, yeah,
We're fed up with going down, getting beaten by 100 points by Manchester kids and London
yeah,
kids and all that stuff. You want to build that, and we all know that there's kind of little deserts of success, little
yeah, yeah,
oases of success in the
yeah,
desert that are British
yeah, yeah,
basketball,
yeah,
basically around arenas.
yeah,
And I think the impression I got was that from what Steve Timoney was saying is that is now the accepted. He said things like, for instance, perhaps last year we didn't take the product seriously enough. I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, thank you. Or we didn't look at what was going on. Deal with the fans, deal with the sport, all that type of stuff. And it was literally, it was great. Um, so we'll see what happens. I noticed this. I noticed there's a tweet came in today saying that the BBF has put out
Yeah, I saw that.
the tender
They put out a
for
press release
for the professional league moving forward.
for the
Invitations to
license. Yeah,
tender
yeah.
for the new license. So I think we can probably say things are moving on apace.
They certainly
Uh,
are, Dave.
and I think they only said till the 10th of November.
Yeah, it was early
So,
November.
so it'll be very interesting to see, what type of organisation outside the one that we've got already will be in a position to put something viable together before then.
Mm.
Um, but I just thought rather than leave on a note.
Oh, he's gone. He's pressed the button and gone. So he was leaving on a note of something or other, and he disappeared. We'll call that quits, I think. So on that bombshell, I'm going to have to edit something there just to make that a little still picture of Dave or something. I don't know. Right, we'll call it quits, and he's just text me to tell me his computer died. So that is very Sunday night breakdown that Dave's computer died at the end of it. So we'll wrap it all up. We'll be back again on Monday next week as well, I'm afraid, but we'll do it all again. Thanks for listening and watching. See you soon. Goodbye.